Incredible secret revealed, billionaire heir hidden among us as employee finds life-changing love. The sound of wrench on steel echoed around the garage as Jake wiped the grease from his hands. It was another busy day in Millwood, a town where everyone knew each other, and every service might just come with a side of friendly gossip. "You working hard or hardly working?" came a familiar voice, and Jake looked up to see his new hire, Ethan, standing by the open bay door, sunlight framing him like a halo. Sweat glistened on his brow, but he didn't mind. It was good, honest work, a far cry from the burden he had been shouldering since losing his father. Jake inhaled deeply, heart heavy with responsibilities. He wasn't just running a garage. He was raising his younger siblings, trying to keep the dreams of his family alive while they navigated life without their father. Yet every day, he pushed through, embodying that American spirit of resilience. He looked over at Ethan, who approached wearing a gentle smile, hands calloused but strong. Somehow, the weight felt lighter with Ethan around. Little did anyone know that Ethan had left an empire behind. He had kicked the silver spoon aside for the chance to wear grease-stained jeans and a heart full of compassion. He liked it here, in this little garage filled with laughter and shared stories. There was something deeply fulfilling about it, an authenticity he had longed for in his privileged life. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew. They shared lunchtime sandwiches, swapping stories about their childhoods. Jake spoke proudly about his siblings while Ethan opened up just a crack about how he wanted to connect with real people, not just business partners. Jake found himself captivated. This quiet guy was more grounded than anyone he had ever met, and every laugh shared soothed his heart. But beneath this burgeoning friendship, whispers began to swirl through Millwood. Someone caught a glimpse of Ethan's designer watch. Another noticed the way he always seemed to know just how to fix a car better than anyone else. The judgment began once the rumor took flight. The garage's golden boy was hiding a dark secret. Soon the trust began cracking, a rift visible in their tight-knit cocoon. One night, while wiping down after closing, words were hurled like fire bombs. A customer, someone Jake had known for years, yelled out, "You think you can walk among us? We know who you are. You're not one of us." It struck Jake's heart like a lightning bolt. He felt torn. Everything he had built supporting his family, earning respect in this community, was now under question. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each day became harder. The noise from others echoed in his skull, chipping away at his solid foundation. Jake confronted Ethan, hurt and confused. "Why didn't you tell me?" he shouted. "Did you think lying would make this easier?" The anger in Jake's chest transformed into anguish. He felt isolated as Ethan stood there, blue eyes filled with sincerity. "I wanted to find out who I am, outside of the money. I thought I found that here with you," he replied softly. Jake stood at a crossroads. All he had ever fought for, his family's respect, his place in the community, was being challenged. Could love transcend the chains of judgment? As the garage filled with tension, emotions hung thick, leaving Jake torn between a deeply rooted prejudice and the love he found in Ethan. This was a moment that would change everything, for better or worse. And as he gazed into Ethan's eyes, the question loomed: could he let go of tradition to embrace the heart that had come to mean so much? Jake's heart raced as silence settled in the garage, thick and palpable. The tension hummed between him and Ethan. He wanted to scream, to push away the crush of outsider judgment suffocating them. But he didn't. Instead, he blinked hard, trying to push back the tide of emotions threatening to spill over. "What was I supposed to say?" Ethan's voice remained steady, as if he alone could anchor their sinking ship. "You were getting to know me. I didn't want to ruin it by revealing my past." So you thought hiding the truth would be better? Jake's words were sharp, slicing through the air. He felt a mix of betrayal and confusion, as if the ground beneath him was shifting. In Ethan's honesty, he sensed something genuine, yet the voices of doubt from the town rang louder. Could he trust this man? I didn't hide it to hurt you, Ethan pleaded, stepping closer. I wanted to be just Ethan, not the heir everyone expects me to be. And his voice trembled briefly. I found a connection here that I never thought I'd have, especially with you. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, duration melted away. The world outside ceased to exist, leaving just the two of them grappling with truths. Jake's heart tugged, pulling him in a direction he hadn't dared to consider before. Yet the fear of judgment loomed, heavy as the tools hanging on the walls. I don't know if I can just forget what everyone's saying, Jake admitted, his own voice faltering. We're in a small town, Ethan. They won't just let you be. They'll always judge. Ethan's expression shifted, a mixture of determination and vulnerability nestled in those blue depths. Then let us show them who we really are. Not just me, the both of us. We can break those boundaries. There was a flicker of hope in Ethan's words, a spark that desperately tugged at Jake's heartstrings, but as Jake leaned closer, ready to take a leap into this new territory, an ugly memory surged forth, an echo of the townsfolk's cruel taunts. You think you can walk among us? The words rolled in his mind like a cruel wave crashing against a rocky shore. Jake wanted to protect himself, his siblings, the legacy his father left behind. What if embracing Ethan meant losing everything? Jake. Ethan's voice pulled him back. His eyes searched, pleading for understanding. This is bigger than us. I care about you. Can we fight this together? The thought of standing up against the judgment felt daunting. Would he be strong enough? He looked around, imagining the garage filled with gossip, whispers mutating into accusations. Yet, his gaze returned to Ethan, the man who had seen him, really seen him, while the world had only seen the image of a struggling mechanic. I don't know if I can do this alone, Jake finally whispered, the confession breaking him. But in that moment of uncertainty, something inside him ignited. Maybe fighting together was better than fighting alone. Maybe it was time to reclaim his heart. Maybe we should just talk to everyone, Jake suggested tentatively, his pulse quickening with the thought of placing everything on the line. Let them know who we are. Ethan's expression brightened, joy shimmering in his eyes, infused with a hint of apprehension. Are you sure? I need to be, Jake said, a newfound weight settling on his shoulders. For my family. For us. As they moved toward the door, ready to face the world outside, each step felt like a leap into the unknown. But ahead lay solidarity and warmth, the chance for something new. Could this be the beginning of a transformation in Millwood, or were they bracing for a storm? The weight of uncertainty loomed large, but as they stepped into the fading light of the day, Jake couldn't shake the feeling life might just be waiting for them, ready to reveal what lay beyond the shadows of judgment. Would they find acceptance, or were they walking into a confrontation that would challenge everything they believed? The air felt thick as Jake and Ethan stepped out of the garage and into the dim light of the evening. Their feet moved almost in sync as they walked, but the unspoken words and the weight of their decisions hung heavily between them. Jake's heart pounded, thunderous in his chest, a stark contrast to the serene dusk surrounding them. What if they don't understand? Jake murmured, breaking the silence as they approached the center of town. The familiar sight, small shops lining the street, a few townsfolk milling about, felt both comforting and suffocating. They might not at first, Ethan replied. But isn't that the point? We can't take their judgments to heart before they even know the whole story. Jake glanced at Ethan, searching his face for reassurance, for that glimmer of hope that they could actually change things. Ethan's resolve was contagious, igniting a flame of determination within him. You're right. It's just hard to imagine how this could go. Their path led them toward the community park, where a few locals had gathered for an evening game of softball. It was usually a place of laughter and camaraderie, but as they neared, Jake felt that laughter transformed into a potential tempest. The couple of friends he recognized turned to look, eyes squinting in curiosity and suspicion. "Look who it is," one of them called out, a hint of mockery lacing the words. "The mechanic and the mystery man." Laughter followed, cruel and unfiltered. It hung in the air, an accusation even before any words were spoken. Jake's stomach tightened, a knot of anxiety swirling. "Maybe we should just go home," he suggested, voice barely above a whisper. The thought of arguing, defending, and maybe losing it all felt unbearable. But Ethan's hand found Jake's, grounding him. "No. We're not running away. Not now. They will always have something to say. But we'll be stronger." With a deep breath, he nodded. Jake pulled Ethan closer, bolstered by the warmth of his genuine presence. "All right. Together." As they moved into the gathering, the atmosphere changed. Curiosity mingled with contempt, but Jake could hardly hear the whispers over the quickening beat of his heart. The world around him blurred, leaving only Ethan's unwavering gaze to focus on. "Can we have your attention?" Ethan's voice rang out, steady and sure. Silence fell, prickly and uncertain. Jake's palms grew clammy. "We want to share something with you," he started. "Ethan isn't just Ethan. He has a life outside of Millwood that you've never seen." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan squeezed Jake's hand tighter, his gaze shifting from one familiar face to another. "I've been hiding who I am for too long. I'm not just your mechanic. I'm a part of a legacy that comes with pressure, expectations, and tremendous fear. But I've found a connection here that's real." More whispers skated through the crowd. Jake could feel skepticism hang in the air, like a storm about to break. "And I care for him," Jake added, the words pouring from his heart. The truth felt liberating, even amidst the weight of judgment. "We want to be together. Not just in secret, but openly. We know this may seem strange to you, or even wrong. But love doesn't have to fit a mold." As the realization of their reality washed over the crowd, a woman stepped forward, her expression contemplative. "But love comes with consequences, doesn't it?" Jake felt the energy shift, questions bubbling under the surface. Acceptance was not assured. But he locked eyes with Ethan, their silent promise flickering brightly between them. Together, Jake breathed, emboldened by Ethan's devotion. He could feel the storm stirring, the uncertainty hanging heavier, but in that moment, they stood not as two separate souls but as partners, ready to fight for their truth. What would become of them, standing on the precipice of judgment and acceptance? As murmurs filled the air, it was clear this was just the beginning. Ethan leaned closer, and Jake couldn't help but wonder, were they ready for what came next, whatever the choice may be. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting between Jake and Ethan, their expressions a mix of intrigue and wariness. Jake could feel the tension prickling at the back of his neck. People whispered, their voices became a low hum that filled the park, a gathering storm of opinions waiting to be voiced. Jake's pulse quickened as he stood there, exposed, vulnerable. "What do you mean, part of a legacy?" called a voice from the back, cutting through the murmurs. It was Rick, a local skeptic known for his biting comments. "Are you saying you've been living a lie?" The question hung in the air, thick with accusation. Jake felt like the ground was shifting underneath them. "No. That's not what." Jake started, but Ethan pulled him back gently, using his grip as a lifeline. "Let me explain," Ethan said, his voice steady, yet tinged with emotion. "For too long, I've let others define who I am and who I should be. I grew up with expectations that felt like chains. Coming to Millwood, I thought I could find freedom. But it took meeting Jake to realize that I've been hiding from myself." There was a pause, an almost palpable silence in which the crowd seemed to absorb Ethan's words. Jake glanced at Ethan, who stood unwavering, a beacon of vulnerability and strength. "Why should we believe you?" Rick pressed again, arms crossed. "You say you love each other, but this place is all about family. What about tradition? What about our way of life? Jake inhaled deeply, the weight of Rick's words pushing down on him, tightening his chest. Love was messy. Love didn't care about tradition. Ethan is not just a mechanic. He has a life, a history, a part of him that none of us know. Every person has something to offer, a story that might surprise us if we let it, he declared, speaking from his heart, hoping for the miracle of understanding. More murmurs broke out, but this time they felt different. The skepticism began to blend with curiosity. And what about you, Jake? What's in it for you? A woman asked, stepping forward. Her arms were crossed, her expression softened with guarded interest. Everything. He shot back, the words escaping before he fully registered them. He makes me a better person. I want to be the best version of myself, and I found that in him. We support each other. But that's just it, we're not asking for permission. We want to share who we are. A slow realization washed over the crowd. Acceptance was tentative, still fragile, yet Jake could see cracks forming in the rock-solid facade of indifference. A few people shared glances, whispering to each other, processing the moment. I think we need to respect their truth, a soft voice chimed in, cutting through the tension. Jake felt a swell of hope, his heart lifting. He locked eyes with Ethan, who smiled back, an exchange of unspoken words, an affirmation that they were leaning on one another through this storm. Just then, a figure broke through the crowd. It was Clara, the town's mayor, known for her progressive views but also her diplomatic approach. Everyone, please, she said, her voice calm yet firm. What we need now is patience. Love, in all its forms, continues to challenge and expand our understanding. But there's more at stake here, isn't there? Jake's heart dropped. What did she know? The anxious whispers flickered like a flame, ready for a gust of wind. Ethan squeezed Jake's hand tighter, grounding him. What do you mean? Ethan asked, his voice steady, though Jake could sense the tension bubbling beneath the surface. Clara took a moment, her gaze sweeping across the gathering. You two have ignited a conversation that this town has avoided for far too long. But the truth often comes with more questions. In that moment, Jake felt the weight of 1,000 questions pressing on him. The storm was brewing, and somewhere deep down, he knew that acceptance wouldn't come easily. But could they withstand it? Could they brave the turbulence of their shared truth? As Clara prepared to elaborate, Jake's heart raced with uncertainty. They stood on the edge of a monumental change, both thrilling and terrifying. Would they find their way through, or would this be the moment everything came crashing down? Clara took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing slightly as she contemplated her next words. In our pursuit of progress, we sometimes forget the complexities of our history. Millwood isn't just a town, it's a tapestry of generations woven together by tradition. But like any living thing, it must also adapt. The crowd remained restless, whispers turned to shouts. What does that mean for us, Clara? Someone demanded. It means, she continued, her voice steadying, that the love story you see between Jake and Ethan is only the beginning. They may have opened doors we've kept shut. Clara paused, allowing her truth to resonate. This legacy you speak of carries burdens and wonders. It is both a strength and a chain. We need to ask ourselves, are we ready to embrace both? Jake felt a surge of anxiety in the pit of his stomach. He turned to Ethan, whose face was a mixture of hope and fear. Their hands squeezed tighter together. They both understood that they were standing not just for their love, but for something bigger, a potential shift in perspective for their town. Do we want to be known for being progressive, or will we continue to stand for outdated ideologies? Clara pressed, her gaze unwavering. Jake and Ethan are challenging us to reconsider. Their love doesn't threaten our family values, it enriches our community. Rick spat out a scoff. What about the children? Aren't you concerned about their future? Yet, before Clara could respond, Jake took a step forward. The moment felt electric. What about our future? He called out, addressing the crowd. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who has been told love looks a certain way. We can redefine what family means, what love means. The crowd fell into a hush, eyes shifting back to Ethan and Jake. A few people blinked, realization dawning on them, could it be possible to forge a new legacy altogether? Slowly, an older gentleman named Mr. Billings, who had lived in Millwood for most of his life, stood up. I remember when I married my husband. We faced our own storms, but love prevailed. We built a life together. No one questioned our devotion, even if it didn't fit the mold. His words rippled through the gathering like a pebble dropped in water. If love can endure, can it not also serve as a foundation for growth? Jake's heart raced as Mr. Billings' words ignited murmurs of agreement. Clara smiled, encouraged by this unexpected support. You see, change often comes wrapped in uncertainty, but it is also where hope is born. But Rick was unsatisfied. You're just going to let this happen? This town should have standards. Jake felt frustration bubble inside him. What kind of standards? To hide from who we are? To mute our voices out of fear? Just then, Clara raised her hand for silence. We have a choice before us. A chance to accept this new chapter. But as in any battle for truth, not everyone will choose to fight. That's the crux of it. Jake could feel the unease rising again, the mixed emotions of the crowd swirling around him like wind through trees. But what if we fail? He muttered nearly to himself. What if we lose everything in the end? Ethan's voice cut through the fear like a blade. If we lose, then we lose together. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side. I'll never regret choosing love, even if it's hard. The tension cracked like a whip, and Jake felt the undeniable force of Ethan's words. The crowd had shifted once again, pockets of acceptance began to bloom among uncertainty. Yet in the back of his mind, a nagging thought loomed: did every face in the crowd, every pair of eyes watching, see love the same way? As Clara prepared to address their concerns further, Jake realized he was at a crucial crossroad. This wasn't just about their love, this was their chance at liberation, and the chance for others to find theirs as well. Could they truly bridge the gap? Or would the long-held beliefs anchored in tradition prove too deep to uproot? Jake wished he had a crystal ball to see ahead. But as he looked around the crowd once more, a wave of determination washed over him. They had to find out together, their story was just beginning. The air was thick with anticipation. Jake could sense the weight of the moment stretching out, each heartbeat echoing with uncertainty. He shared a quick glance with Ethan. Their eyes held a silent promise, a bond forged through every challenge they faced together. The crowd, a blend of faces but a single heartbeat, seemed to wait for more. Clara stepped forward again, her voice calm, yet piercing through the tension. Let me ask you all, what is love? Is it not a force powerful enough to reshape our lives and our town? Her gaze swept across the crowd. What Jake and Ethan show us is courage. They show us that love does not conform, it creates a path and invites others to walk along it. A murmur began to grow, simmering first with doubt, then bubbling into cautious agreement. People shifted, glancing at one another with expressions that spoke louder than words, a mix of hope and hesitancy. They wanted to believe, but could they? Then, a woman from the back cried out, but what about the teachings we've held dear? Isn't it all rooted in tradition? Jake's heart sank momentarily. Tradition. That word had such power here. But then he remembered Mr. Billings, with his resilient smile. Gathering his courage, he stepped forward again. Tradition is only as strong as the lives it touches. If it hinders our capacity to love without boundaries, then maybe it's time we rewrite it, Jake called back, his voice ringing with a mix of defiance and longing. We are all part of this story, and we deserve to be seen, to be loved openly for who we are. The crowd murmured, some nodding. He could feel a shift, a momentum building. Change isn't easy, Clara said, her voice embracing the community as if trying to pull them in. It's frightening, but also think of the children. What kind of world do we want to create for them? One filled with acceptance and understanding, or one shadowed by division? Our children need to see love in all its forms. A voice from the crowd piped up, what if our children get confused? It was Rick again, becoming more frustrated with each passing moment. Jake felt the heat of the challenge bite into him once more. Confusion can lead to understanding, he replied, his heart pounding. Wouldn't it be better for them to learn that love is vast, that it comes in different shapes? Our children can grow up in a world that accepts them. That allows them to love freely, without fear. And just like that, the crowd found their voice. One after another, people shared their stories, young couples, single parents, older allies who had loved outside the norm and faced their own battles. The tapestry of voices wove together, creating a colorful backdrop against Rick's opposition. Amidst this rising tide of support, Jake noticed Ethan slipping away from his side and approaching Clara. Their eyes met, a silent agreement passing between them. Maybe he would share something important, something stirring within him. Jake's stomach twisted with curiosity and strength intertwined. As he watched, Ethan began to speak with passion. I am not ashamed of who I am, he declared, his voice gaining traction. I'm proud of my love for Jake, and I won't hide anymore. If that means breaking down walls, then let us tear them down together. The emotion poured out of people, smiles mixing with tears, and suddenly the moment felt electric. Could they really be on the brink of something monumental? But just as hope began to swell, Rick shook his head, his face a mask of disbelief. You think this will change anything? You all just want to paint over the truth with your new version of love, but it's a lie. His words sliced through all the positivity, planting a seed of doubt. Would they ever escape the chains of prejudice? Jake felt the future teetering on a precipice. Where was this leading? Could the momentum hold? Would they truly see new faces rise, or would old grudges remain too powerful to overcome? Ethan stepped back to Jake's side, gripping his hand tightly. Whatever happens next, we face it together, he murmured. Jake nodded, fueled by the strength of his partner and the crowd surrounding them. This moment was just the start, the battle against tradition had only begun. And as the crowd shifted again, it was clear they were standing at the edge of something transformative. What would this town choose? Would Millwood embrace love unconditionally, or would it retreat back to its old ways? Answers hung in the air like the promise of dawn. The murmurs in the crowd swelled, transforming from hesitant whispers into a collective energy that vibrated through the air. Jake felt each heartbeat as a growing wave, pressing against him, lifting him. Yet, beyond the energy, anxiety gnawed at the edges of his resolve. What if they couldn't move forward? Ethan's grip on Jake's hand tightened, anchoring him in the swirling sea of emotions. We can do this, Ethan said, his voice steady, yet tinged with urgency. We just need to show them how love transcends fear. As if on cue, Clara raised her arms wide, channeling the crowd's restlessness. Here we stand. In this pivotal moment, we have the chance to choose love over division. But more importantly, we must choose unity. The crowd erupted into applause, a blend of support and uncertainty. Rick stood stiffly, arms crossed, a fortress of defiance in the midst of it all. Jake could see the shadows flitting across Rick's face, doubt creeping in behind the bravado. Did he sense the cracks forming in the wall he had built around himself? Beneath the noise, Jake sensed the weight of voices lingering unsaid. Each story that had yet to be told flickered in the eyes of the crowd. He heard snippets, families divided, dreams stifled, and longing hearts. Then, from the middle of the crowd, a familiar voice broke through the din. I grew up believing I had to hide who I loved. It belonged to Maria, an older neighbor whose laughter always warmed the summer nights. But love isn't a sin. It should never feel like a weight we bear. Heads turned, eyes softened. The vulnerability was contagious, sparking others to share their truths. One by one, voices rose, weaving a quilt of resilient stories of love that broke barriers, of acceptance that had once been mere whispers. Jake felt the air cool as hope ignited, hearts connecting like roots intertwining beneath the surface. Each story added weight to their cause, tearing at the old fabric of fear. Clara nodded furiously, encouraging more to join. And then it hit him, a shift, a moment of clarity washed over Jake. "I want to say something," he shouted, cutting through the emotion-laden air. Love is often born in spaces we never think to look. Love is messy and complex, and that's what makes it real. He stepped forward, drawing in courage. When we close our hearts, we're denying the very essence of who we are, who God made us to be. We deny our neighbors, our friends, and even ourselves. Tension lingered, but Jake could feel a tide turning. He dared to meet Rick's eyes. "You don't have to be afraid of what's different. Embracing love doesn't mean abandoning our traditions, it means expanding them. It means making space for everyone, and that makes us stronger." Jake's words hung in the air as if carving a niche where hope breathed deeply. But just as relief washed over him, Rick exploded. "Enough. You think by showing us these stories, by sharing your happiness, you can change our beliefs? Love is more than just feelings thrown together. It's not the way, it's a delusion masquerading as openness." Silence fell again, thick and sticky. The air crackled with raw emotion. Jake felt his heart wrench inward against the tide of vitriol pouring out. The echo of Rick's disbelief settled, creating a chasm once again. Ethan surged forward, the fire in his heart lighting up his gaze. "But it is real. And that's what makes it powerful." He stepped toward Rick, his voice unwavering. "You can't deny us the happiness we've fought for. You can't redraw our boundaries. Love comes and finds us where we least expect it." As eyes turned, Jake felt a collective breath held in anticipation. For a moment, the air seemed balanced, suspended like the outcome of a coin toss. Would this moment tip toward acceptance or rejection? Every ear strained, every heartbeat fast. Jake's pulse thundered loudly in his chest, a chorus mixed with Ethan's steadfast heartbeat beside him. It was an invitation to decide together, and just then, a young boy, perhaps 8 or 9, stood up from within the sea of adults, eyes bright and startlingly clear. "I just want to be happy. Isn't that what we all want?" In that instant, every heart swelled with possibility. Eyes blinked away tears as the gravity of his words sank deeper. The profound simplicity hung in the air, the boy's innocence revealed a path forged from purity and hope, yet, as positioning began to shift within the crowd, Rick's incredulity morphed into something darker. The air quivered. What decision would the community make? Would they rally around the boy's innocent yearning for happiness, or would they retreat back into shadows of fear? Jake's heart raced. The answer felt like it could tip over any moment, like a fragile glass teetering on the edge of a counter. Would he and Ethan find their homes in a community that embraced love? And as those questions loomed large, uncertain, Jake realized the real battle was far from over. A hushed silence descended, every eye shifting from the boy to Rick, who appeared caught in a wave of conflicting emotions. The flicker of uncertainty merged with anger, creating a storm brewing within him. Jake's heart raced, sensing the precarious balance of the moment. "Happy?" Rick scoffed, his voice rising again. "You think happiness is that simple? What you're all advocating for is chaos disguised as love. You want to upend generations of belief because of a few touching stories?" The boy's face fell, and Jake's stomach churned at the hurt he saw like a shadow cross over the child's innocence. But as the crowd stood tense, filled with conflicting energies, Jake realized this was more than just an argument, it was a moment of profound reckoning. Ethan took a subtle step closer to Rick, his gaze unwavering. "Love doesn't create chaos, Rick. It binds us. It helps us let go of fear and embrace understanding. You want to talk about generations? Think about the generation you're raising. What will they learn from us?" Rick's brows knitted together, a war raging within him. The knot of tension tightened around Jake's heart. He sensed that something vital was at stake, not just for their community, but for the very fabric of their lives. Without hesitation, Clara moved forward, her voice powerful and steady. "Rick, you've always cared for this community. Your heart has always been in the right place. But at time we expand what family means. We're not asking you to forget your past, but to embrace a future colorful with love." The crowd stirred restlessly, murmuring in agreement. Jake felt hope stir in his chest again. Would they convince Rick? Would he see the light through the cracks? But Rick's defenses stood tall. "You all talk about love like it's a magic wand. What happens when it falters? When hearts break? Do we abandon the principles that made us strong?" A ripple of unease spread through the crowd, but Jake sensed something was shifting. Perhaps it was the sharpened clarity of Rick's challenge that was prompting the crowd to engage even deeper. "Rick," Jake implored, stepping forward, his heart laid bare. "Have you ever loved someone so deeply that their happiness became your most cherished goal? That the point?" As the question lingered, Rick's steely gaze softened, just a fraction. But still, his defenses remained firm. The boy interjected again, voice small but clear. "But don't we just want everyone to be happy? If you love someone then you should let them love back, right?" That pure, childlike honesty hung in the air, and murmurs of agreement followed. Rick's jaw clenched, and for a heartbeat, Jake believed they were cracking the layers of his steadfast stance. Suddenly, Clara spoke up again, vulnerability spilling from her heart. "Rick, love isn't a zero-sum game. It doesn't take away from your life, it adds to it. We're not striving for perfection, just a chance for happiness for everyone, yours, mine, and even the boys." As Clara's words resonated through the crowd, Jake felt the weight of the moment shift. It was heavier now, almost charged. People exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting a mix of hope, uncertainty, and fierce resolve, but then, Rick shook his head vehemently. "You can't just wish away years of tradition and belief." He stepped back, arms crossing again like a wall being rebuilt. Jake's heart sank, but he found his voice again. "What if, instead of wishing, we take the risk? What if we collectively build a new tradition, a new belief rooted in inclusivity?" There was a pause as eyes darted. Jake realized this was the crux. Rick was the decision-maker, and they stood at the edge of a crucial choice. Deep down, they all felt the weight of this moment, teetering on the brink of transformation, but just then, from the back, an older gentleman stood, face drawn but determination shining. "I lost my son because we wouldn't let him love freely. That fear, it shattered our family. I say we forge a path towards love now, while we still can." Gasps echoed, and Jake lost sight of Rick for a moment. The floodgates he thought were locked tight were beginning to show cracks, a light might be shining through. Suddenly, a hand reached out to Jake from the back. It was Maria, nodding toward him. "Together, we can reshape what's possible. We owe it to ourselves, to the future, to our children." The courage of those around him began to rise, walls of resistance shaking. The crowd breathed in unity, the chill of fear easing, but as Rick glared, his gnarled fist nearby, Jake felt the pulse of impending conflict rise again. Would they stand together or unravel? Would this be the moment they either moved forward or fell apart? Hope and anxiety jostled wildly in Jake's chest. Could they really transform fear into acceptance, or was Rick destined to silence their dreams? Jake could feel that tipping point approaching. And just as clarity seemed to settle, Rick's voice boomed, "You really think this is going to end peacefully? You're naive." Jake braced himself, feeling the storm wind up to its crescendo. Would they truly face the change they so desperately sought, or would the waves of fear drown them once more? The unsettling tension left every heart pounding, waiting for the storm to break. The air thickened as Rick's challenge hit like a clap of thunder. A hush spread through the crowd, faces turning to him, holding their breath. Jake felt the heat of their collective gaze and the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. He wanted to scream that they would not back down, that this was their moment, but all he could hear was the thudding of his own heartbeat. Naive? Clara's voice sliced through the tension, a fierce spark igniting in her eyes. Or maybe you are the one who is afraid to change. We're not making demands, we're sharing our dreams. Do you want to fight us because it's easier than wrestling with your own fears? Jake watched as Rick flinched at her words. He could see the flicker of doubt creeping into his expression, like light trying to push past the heavy clouds in the sky. The boy behind Jake tugged at his sleeve, his wide eyes searching the sea of faces around them, innocence mingling with confusion. Rick, the boy said softly, voice trembling but resolute. You want us to be happy. Let us be happy. His small hand rose, palm open as if to offer the world a chance to see things differently. The crowd shifted, a murmuring wave of realization rippling through. Even Ethan stepped in, drawing closer. This isn't just about us. It's about the legacy we leave behind, the values we instill in our kids. Traditions must evolve, or they become shackles. Maybe we should be brave enough to rewrite what has been written, Jake added, his throat raw. Let us inspire a world where happiness isn't dictated by outdated beliefs. When have we ever been truly strong if we're building walls instead of bridges? Rick seemed to shrink, his muscles tensing and then softening, a glimpse of vulnerability emerging from his steely demeanor. But just as a flicker of hope sparked within the crowd, he raised his chin defiantly. You're asking for a lot. Maybe too much. But we're willing to give a lot. Clara replied, passion igniting her words. And isn't that the real measure of love? It's about sacrifice, pushing beyond comfort. Building something lasting that welcomes everyone. The air buzzed with energy, an invisible thread tightening around their hearts. Hope was palpable, as raw as the words being exchanged. Rick could lose himself, his family, and they were begging him to look past himself, and then a figure emerged from the back, a woman, older, whose familiar eyes shimmered with emotion. Rick, she said, her tremor evident in her voice. You taught our children to be strong. Don't let them face a world that defines love as exclusion. Let us show them the beauty of acceptance. Jake's pulse raced. He had never witnessed anything like this. Here was Rick, crumbling under the pressure of love laid bare, refusing to let walls suffocate him and the community, but then, just as hope began to lift everyone's spirits, Rick barked a sharp laugh that cut through the warmth. What happens when those dreams collide? When love becomes too messy to control? You think it's all fairy tales and happy endings, but it's not. Reality is harder. Reality is what you decide to create. Jake shot back, shaking with emotion. You control that, Rick. If you want to hold on to your fears, that's your choice. But don't you see? We can either build each other up or let our divisions tear us apart. Silence followed, the crowd hanging on Rick's next move. His mouth opened, uncertainty flickering behind his eyes as he looked at the sea of faces ready to fight for a new beginning. Now the pressure outweighed the fear. Would Rick choose to step into the light, or cling to the shadows? The moment teetered on the edge, a delicate balance between progress and regression. As he searched their faces, the pulse of anticipation beat louder, drowning out his reservations. What would he choose? The collective hearts around him thudded in rhythm, waiting for the inevitable decision that could either bind them in unity or shatter them into chaos. Jake breathed, uncertain whether his words or thoughts could reach him now. The crowd pressed closer, an unspoken bond forming, breaths mingling in the hopeful silence, and then, the unthinkable happened. A single tear escaped Rick's eye. Suddenly, everything hung in the balance, the air electrified with the weight of unvoiced thoughts. What would that tear mean for their future? The moment of truth awaited, thick with possibility. Rick wiped the tear away quickly, but it had already fallen, a signal of the tides shifting within him. The crowd held their breath, an entire community poised on the edge of a monumental moment. Maybe, he started, his voice faltering but steadying as he continued, maybe I've been too focused on protecting what I thought tradition was supposed to be. Maybe I've been blind. He locked eyes with Jake, realization flickering within the depths of his gaze. Jake felt a rush of emotion swirl around him, relief, hope, and an overwhelming sense of possibility all coursing through him. He stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Rick, it's never too late to choose love over fear. We're all in this together." The crowd erupted in murmurs, a mix of apprehension and encouragement. "I know I am set in my ways," Rick continued, his voice firmer now. "But seeing this community rally for something greater, it makes me wonder if I was wrong. Tradition is important, but it shouldn't cage us. Maybe it's time to redefine what it means to be a family." The words rolled, gaining strength. Heads nodded, eyes sparkled with unshed tears. Ethan squeezed Jake's hand tighter, sharing a look that held the promise of a future they had dared to imagine. As Rick turned to address the crowd fully, there was a new gentleness in his tone. "I can't promise that change will be easy, but what I can say is that we owe it to ourselves to try. To embrace every form of love, every story, and every human connection." Gasps and cheers erupted, a chorus of liberation swelling in the evening air. "Let us make acceptance not just words but a living, breathing entity that shapes our town." Clara interjected, her eyes glistening. "Together, we can build something beautiful." Jake felt the weight lift off his shoulders as the crowd erupted into applause, a symphony of support echoing through Millwood like a melody of acceptance. The boy from before tugged his sleeve again, looking up with hopeful, innocent eyes. "Does this mean we really get to be happy?" Rick crouched down, meeting the boy's gaze with sincerity. "Yes. Happiness is not a privilege, it's a right for everyone." The boy's face lit up, and the warmth radiating from the crowd enveloped them all like a protective embrace. In that moment, Jake felt a full heart swell within him, tears stinging at the corners of his eyes. He battled doubt, fear, and the weight of tradition, believing he was risking everything for acceptance. Yet here they were facing the unknown together, ready to tear down walls, both within themselves and the town they loved. One by one, the townsfolk stepped forward, sharing their visions and hopes. Voices once stifled now sang in sweet harmony. Stories of love emerged, illustrating the strength that came when hearts connected. As Ethan stood at Jake's side, he spoke with overwhelming fervor, "Let us celebrate what makes us unique. We can build bridges, not barriers." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Millwood, hope filled the air. Rick and Jake found themselves at the center, hands joined, embodying change, beloved by the community that had been hesitant but was finally bursting with acceptance. The future gleamed bright, filled with the promise of love, compassion, and greatest of all, unity. In that moment, Jake realized their love had transformed not just their lives but the very essence of Millwood. The storm had calmed, and what lay ahead was a tapestry woven together with threads of hope, bridging the gaps that once separated them. As joy and laughter filled the community park where they stood, echoing out into the sunset, Jake turned to Ethan, feeling gratitude burst within him. They had fought for a love that was real, and now, they stood strong together. And as the last rays of the sun kissed the earth, Jake knew this was only the beginning of their continuous journey toward acceptance. They had rewritten the narrative not just for themselves but for everyone. Join us in this journey of transformation. It's time to embrace your story like Jake and Ethan did together. You need to subscribe now to witness more exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this community thriving. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Show your support for the love that brings us all together.